welcome to the Crimson Stitchery, a video channel about making all things beautiful and useful. My name is Anushka. You can find me elsewhere online as Sourtelling. That's Sourtelling, my username on Instagram and Ravelry too, where we also have a Ravelry group. It's a beautifully sunny yet crisp and cool October evening, and I thought to myself, why not wear a ball gown and, you know, pose. I'm feeling rather gothic. I have a bouquet of creamy greeny roses, and I have 1980s sterling silver jewellery and 1980s chiffon velvet and silk satin ball gown. So here you are. What a treat. Welcome to my crafty lair. Right, the lighting's just going a bit crazy. The sun is literally there going in and out of the clouds. I've cast the shadow of my fig tree so elegantly to the side, but I thought that, yeah, let's just record a podcast because I don't know about you, but I'm having a really nice, calm and chilled out weekend. So I feel like this is a really good time to be chatting to you guys again compared to quite a few of the last few episodes where I've actually been quite stressed and rushed. But today I feel really good and I'd love to know how you are doing too in the comments. Let me know. Just a little note, obviously it's autumn. This is primarily a knitting podcast. This is kind of my craft vlog, and I am not really embodying a lot of knitterly stereotypes, except I am wearing hand knitted socks. So there you go. These are the Hermione's Everyday socks in a really lurid fluorescent green hand dyed wool. They're a few years old, they used to be more fluorescent, they're a bit faded now, but still love those. And I've got another knitterly stereotype in that I do have a candle going. Yes, I do have a candle. I'm doing it. And the reason that I'm drawing your attention to this candle is because this is a candle that I made. Who knew that A, I would be the type of person that made a candle? Just who knew? And also, B, who knew that making candles is actually quite difficult and a very specialised skill and craft in its own right. Certainly not me. I definitely totally took it for granted. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about my foray into candle making at the Lard Alive section of the podcast, which will come a little bit later on. That's my kind of home and garden and kitchen witchy escapades kind of section. But I just wanted to draw your attention to candle making right now because knitters, candles and autumns is a massive cliche. Probably for a reason, right? Because it's really nice. And if, like me, it turns out that you do not have the transferable skills that automatically take you towards professional level, amazing, like scented wafts of gorgeousness of candle making heaven, then I'd like to draw your attention to a little small business that you might consider supporting. And I'm now showing you an empty jar. But I'll put an image on screen now. It's Wick candles. This is all completely unsponsored. I'm just trying to help a girl out. It's another small crafty business made by Alana in West London, who's a West London native. So hi Alana, if you're watching, I know you do dip in from time to time, but yeah, completely unsponsored. I said I'd mention this on the podcast because I really want to support her. And as you can see, I'm like waving around this hideously empty jar because it really did just smell that good and we really did burn it all. So, you know, if I put my pathetic light in the jar, you kind of get an idea. But yeah, just wanted to mention Wick candles. All of her links and stuff will be down below in the description box as usual for any of my videos. But if you're in the market for a nice scent or a treat, or if you're looking to get a present, do check out her Etsy shop. Her stuff is really lovely, and I especially appreciate the fact that her stuff is all packaged in, you know, recyclable cardboard and very much eco-friendly packaging. Like all of her printing and stuff is done by hand, by a stencil. It's just really, really lovely to see. So yeah, I'll also highlight that I've seen the like slogan for like buy black and buy from black owned businesses and support the Black Pound and things like that. Quite a lot kicking around on social media. So that's kind of an added incentive as well If you want to yeah, support black owned businesses, then definitely check out Alana's Etsy shop, because yeah, it's definitely worth supporting talent. I think like it's great to dabble and try things out, but sometimes it's important, I think, also to step back a little bit and just be like, actually, you're really good at this. I'm gonna enjoy your success and your skill, because clearly for me it's not been transferable. So yeah, put that away now. In this episode, yeah, I've got Lard Alive, I've got a bit of knitting, the tiniest bit of sewing, and then just kind of general chat and life update. And as I said, I'm feeling quite relaxed, quite happy. I'm wearing a dress, it was actually my auntie's, so it's an 80s dress. I don't know if she got it vintage. It's really fun. It's got this bias cut skirt. And I used to wear this to play concerts in. It was like my concert dress when I was playing the cello in orchestras when I was a teenager. So that's all a complete digression. Maybe you've wandered off at this point, but maybe you're rejoining me and you also have got into your ball gown. Let me know. Let me know if anyone else is now sitting here in a ball gown. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about my knitting. So last episode I shared my latest sock knitting pattern, the curly whirly socks, and thank you so much for your warm reception of that. Got so much positive feedback. I was also personally inspired that I had like messages from people who said that they'd never knitted a sock before, but they loved the pattern and they're just having a go. I think that that's fantastic. That's such a good way. Just have a go, just get into it and see what happens. So obviously I had the ambition as part of my Crimson Sock Along Knit Along to release one more sock pattern this autumn or this year really, but the best laid plans get completely derailed. And firstly, I'll just say as a side note that yes, I'm going to extend the sock along all the way to the end of November. Let's just keep knitting socks until December and then let's take a break of socks. So let's just keep going. Please do cast on any of my sock patterns. Use the hashtag Crimson Sock Along on Instagram and tag me and all of that good stuff. Yeah, let me know what you've been making and, you know, spread the word and tell people about the patterns. We have some lovely, lovely prizes that I won't go into because I mentioned it a couple of episodes ago, so I'll try and recap on the prizes next week. I just feel like I'm talking a mile a minute and I'm excited to be podcasting and I feel like I've got a lot to share with you guys. But it's yarn and sock bags, basically, really cute yarn and really cute sock bags, knitting bags. But anyway, what was I saying? The best laid plans. So, deep breath. Totally not used to this again. Yeah, anyway. Basically I went to see my grandparents and it's got very cold. Obviously it's mid-October, like it should be getting cold, but I just think everyone, I'm definitely not the only one, but everyone I've spoken to is in a bit of a time warp this year, and to me honestly it still feels like March, but we had the whole summer, so I don't really know what happened. And basically my grandfather, when I went to see him, my grandfather's nearly 80. He's still incredibly active, and I arranged to hire them an allotment this year, which I literally got the weekend before lockdown in the UK for them, and it's been really fantastic for them. They spent the whole spring and summer out on the allotment. They've worked so hard, like they've had fresh air, they've had sunlight, they've had exercise, they've had some socialisation, except that it turns out that allotment politics is like a real thing. Yeah, I'm not even going to go into that one, but anyway, and he's still working hard because it got to July and I was like, and he wanted to wind down and I was like, no, you can't wind down, you've got to plant the winter crops, you've got to do the cabbage, you've got to do the broccoli. I was like, you love broccoli, you can buy like Chinese, like the long stemmed crunchy broccoli, these cabbage seeds, you can buy bok choy seeds. I don't know why, like, I guess when you think of planting veg in the UK, it's like potatoes, carrots, which are a bit hard, you can get tomatoes in the summer, you can get leafy greens and stuff like that. But somehow it hadn't quite occurred to him that he could buy like the seeds for Chinese vegetables that he likes to eat. So yeah, anyway, long story short, we went and ordered 6 different types of bok choy seeds. So that's going to be fun. So he's still been there like digging away, staking, watering, because you have to water everything by hand with a watering can. It's a ludicrous system, but anyway, yeah, you can't just get a hose. And I saw him and he was like so stiff, he could barely move, and I said, what's wrong? And he said, oh, I was so cold that I had to just stop working in the allotment and I had to sit in my car to warm up like for an hour. And I was like, why did you do that? You know, why did you do that? I mean, I'm sure, you know, I know I have viewers who are gardeners and keen, you know, growers as well, and I totally get it. Once you get into the flow of being out in the garden, you kind of can't stop, and then suddenly you're like, oh my goodness, I'm so cold, I can't move. So I said to them, why don't you just do little but often? Just go in and do 20 minutes and then go home, you know? Don't go there for 3 hours. But anyway, that's like a whole nother thing. Stubborn old men, stubborn old men. And then obviously I said to him, like, are you okay? He was like, no, my feet are so cold, so cold. And I said, why don't you wear your wool socks? And that was like a whole nother thing. Anyway, so basically I just felt like I was under like an urgent rush to knit some stuff for my granddad. I've not ever knitted anything for him because he's incredibly dismissive. He never wants anything. Even if you buy him a present, he won't accept it, or he'll just leave it hanging around in his closet for years, if not decades. It'll just be hanging around, and then one day he'll be wearing it, like literally 10 years later. So I hadn't ever been inclined to knit anything for him before, despite the fact that I started knitting at like 13 or 14, and I've knit stuff for all of my family members pretty much. And friends, and like so much stuff for my partner, because they were all so grateful and willing, like maybe even too willing to be recipients, but he was always so dismissive and just didn't seem bothered like at all. So I was never inclined to knit anything for him. And so then now I was like, actually enough is enough. You should really be wearing some wool to keep you warm. So what I did was I ordered some boring wool from online. It all had to be machine washable, and it all had to be relatively soft, because I think that the reason why my grandparents have avoided wool for a long time is because to their mind wool is what it was in the 1970s and 80s. Rough, prickly, scratchy, stiff, will give you a rash, will irritate you, will exacerbate your existing eczema and things like that. And they don't realise how far along, you know, commercial wool production has become. And also, you know, they're used to accidentally putting things in the washing machine and they become felted. Like so much stuff has all been ruined. So I think for them, they wrote wool off quite a while ago. So I was quite keen for them to have wool so they can have the warmth, the wicking properties, the fact that it can be very lightweight, the fact that it's good for, you know, cold and warm because it, you know, adapts to your body temperature. I was really keen for them to explore that. So I got some boring yarn. It's all in just blue at the moment, and I've got one boring sock for him. So I had to, you know, I really just wanted to get cracking with the knitting for him. I'm not even going to wait till Christmas. I'm just going to give it to him because he's so stubborn. It takes him such a long time to wear stuff. And because he's a rough old man with rough old gardener's feet, I knit the socks on smaller needles than I normally do. Went one size down, and I held a reinforcing thread in the heel and in the toe. So yeah, they're just plain 2x2 ribbed socks. So I've got that one there. Sun's coming back out to say hello. And then on the second one, I have just done the leg and I'm about to start the heel turn. So yeah, the yarn is Regia Vierfädig 4-ply tweed, and it's just in this bog standard navy colour, but I'm not sure how much is coming up on camera, but the tweedy flecks are in red, orange and a kind of spruce green. So it's pretty jolly, which, I mean, I wouldn't have chosen those colour tweed neps if I had had a choice, which I don't. But I know that he will, he'll like it jolly, and they're just kind of plain. So I just need to get on with that. And then I was kind of trying to plough on with this as much as possible, but because I had gone one needle size down to make a stronger and even firmer, more durable fabric, the tension was so tight, especially with the ribs, that my hands were actually getting quite tired quite easily. And as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I've just had such a hectic 6 weeks. Ever since the beginning of term, literally first week of September, like the 1st of September was like a transformation. Things have been really hectic, and I've been so tired. I've actually not even been knitting in the evenings. I've not been knitting in front of the television, which I normally do. Obviously I'm not commuting at the moment because of working from home. So yeah, I've been so tired, and then I wasn't even knitting on these. Now the other thing that I wanted to knit for my granddad was a waistcoat. And I think I'd been a bit hard on myself because I had this sort of one thing at a time mentality going with knitting projects. I was like, I just want to start knit it, finish it, move on, start, knit it, finish it, move on. But actually I was getting so tired, and then I thought, actually, I think I just need to knit something that's not a sock, because I've been doing so much sock knitting, what with all of the knitting patterns that I've designed over the last few months, especially as many of them I did in 2 samples with 2 different lengths of the sock. Just so that that was, you know, well demonstrated for my audience, for you guys, just so that you could see and kind of visualize better what they look like. But that obviously became double the workload for all of that pattern writing. So the point I'm trying to make was, then I decided that maybe I was being a bit hard on myself, and what I needed was like a big piece of knitting so that my hands weren't cramped up in this tiny little thing but could just relax. So I decided to cast on for a waistcoat for him at the same time, and I was so glad that I did that. I was so glad. I'm not normally so strict with myself on projects. I normally do like one big project like a sweater or a shawl and a pair of socks at the same time, but I normally work on socks during my commute. I generally have like 45 to an hour commute to get to like wherever I'm going in the city, unless, you know, I happen to be doing something vaguely in like my compass point of London. But you know, as all Londoners will know, it's a huge city. It takes ages to get anywhere that you need to go. So, you know, I'd normally have a lot of time to do commute knitting for socks, and obviously that has gone with working from home. The time is spent by sleeping. So yeah, I'm not normally that hard on myself, but anyway, you know, you just kind of get into these little thought patterns before you realise. So long story short, so when I did all this ordering for boring blue yarn, I also got this. You can kind of see it's this soft kind of mid blue colour, and this is the back of a waistcoat, so it's just an awful lot of stockinette. And yeah, it's kind of coming up. That's the underarm. It's coming up, it's getting there. So plain back. And this one, the yarn is Cascade Anchor Bay, which is a blend of 50% merino wool and 50% cotton. And it's produced the most lovely fabric. It's really velvety. It feels like a piece of cotton velvet with a very, very short pile. So I really like it, and it's very drapey. So I thought I'd do him this vest that's 50% wool and 50% cotton, so that he's kind of warm but doesn't get too overheated in it. And then if that works out well and he wears it, I'll do him one in 100% merino wool. But he's quite set in his ways. Again, grumpy old men, can anyone relate? He's got to be eased into the idea, I think, of wearing something that I've made him. Yeah, anyway. So the pattern, it's a free one. I just found it on the Ravelry search, originally Interweave, 2003, and it's modelled by this very cool guy in like super 90s in this big like lilac t-shirt and the beige vest, and it's just got a little cable that runs up and down the side. Yeah, I like his like sunglasses, and this is such a happy guy that like loves his knitwear. So the only modification I'm going to do is that I'm going to do really big pockets on it, like really as big as possible, and I might sub in some other yarn for like the pocket lining, because I only ordered 3 balls of this Cascade yarn. It's sport weight, and I only ordered 3 balls because that's what I seemed to need when I calculated, but it felt a bit too good to be true, and now I'm being a bit paranoid, especially as yeah, as I said, I've decided to put pockets on, but today I was looking at him wearing another knitted waistcoat at his house, and it was a machine knitted one, and the pockets were huge. So I think it's really good that men's clothing is very practical, and you know, like you need a big pocket, but obviously that's going to eat up yarn, so I'll either have to order some more, or I'll see what I've got, if I've got anything that I can just knit in a contrast colour pocket lining that you're never really going to notice. So yeah, hoping to get these done as soon as possible. This vest is seamed and requires picking up stitches in both armholes and the neck and the button band, so it's quite a lot of picking up, which is going to slow me down for sure. But aside from that, I just wanted to comment and kind of say that decision to like switch between the tight tiny socks and the much looser, longer, monotonous piece of flat knitting was definitely a really good idea. So yeah, I would say if you're in a knitting rut, or you know, you just kind of feel some problems, or you find yourself not knitting very much compared to before, or you know, there's sort of those kinds of changes, I just wanted to draw your attention to that, because it worked really well just to kind of switch things up, like in a really minor kind of small way, just switch a few things up, and actually it's made a big difference. And I've managed to do all of this when I wouldn't have been knitting anyway, right? Because I wouldn't have been knitting on the socks, and I've managed to crank this out on its own. Yeah, it's nice and drapey, so we'll see about that. The next piece of knitting that I've got to share is something that I just cast on just to have some knitting when I was waiting for all of this boring blue yarn to arrive, and that is just a scrap sock. So yeah, I just did it. It's nothing more and nothing less. I might keep it for myself, I might give it away to someone, haven't decided who. Obviously that affects the length of the foot, but yeah, I don't really know what to say about it. There's a lot of leftovers in here, and it's got this kind of tobacco brown, like, I don't know what you call this, is it burnt umber? At the top it's got a blue, it's got a hand-dyed peach, it's got a pink, that's that really, and I don't really know what else to say about it. So that got interrupted when I started knitting for my grandfather, another 2x2 rib sock, so the same kind of thing, and yeah, I'll get back to that. And then the last thing that I've been working on is, you'll be glad to know that I turned back to this yellow cardigan that I knit all through the spring, through lockdown, and I started seaming it up. So I've got a side seam, and I put the sleeves into the armholes. So yeah, I've done, what was that, probably half the seaming, or just under half, maybe 45%. And then I've got to do the neckband, which I'm not that confident about, sewing the neckband onto the jumper, but so I've decided to leave it for last. And then I've just got some buttons, just some like plain kind of plasticky glossy buttons, like white ones, cream. Unfortunately I've got 7 buttonholes and only 5 buttons, so 2 are not going to be matching, but we'll work that in. And yeah, I'm excited about how this is coming along. Guess I can kind of put it on now, and I quite like how it looks like that. It's pretty cool actually. But yeah, that's going to turn out, that's very exciting. Very exciting. So I was really hoping to have seen this up so that I could share it with you guys as a finished object today, but it just didn't happen, and if I'd finished the seaming I wouldn't have been able to record, so compromises, it's all about compromises. So hopefully next time this one will be ready. Next up, I'll just talk about a tiny bit of sewing, which is that I've sewn 2 more masks. I'm not going to put them on because I'm wearing lipstick, which I've discovered is not compatible with mask wearing, but I've got a black and white spotty with some flower yellow lining, which is quite cheery, and I've swapped out the ribbon ties for rolled elastic now, which is much easier, let's be honest. And then I've got a stripy, this one's in the same fabric that one of my prizes was sewn in actually for the sock bags, so yeah, a little bit there. And I'll put the link to the free pattern that I used in the description box below. But what I've been trying to do is, obviously we've been going out more now, and yeah, just decided that it's a good idea to wear masks more. So because I don't really enjoy making them, as I find it quite fiddly and time consuming for something that I know I need to wear, but I feel, I guess, quite resentful about having to wear still. Not because I don't think you should wear them. I think we should be wearing them. Wear a mask, stay safe. But you know, just like the whole thing, it's a faff, and it's just not as easy. You can't just nip out and do things and be spontaneous anymore, which is my preferred way of doing things. So yeah. So to try and combat that, I've been trying to leave the sewing machine with a bit of a mask started. So if I'm packing up my sewing things, I'll make sure that I've at least cut out some of the pieces, or if I'm just doing something quickly, I'll stitch at least a little bit of a mask so that then when I actually think to myself, oh, I'm going to go and make a mask, actually I've already got that head start and it's so much quicker and more pleasurable, and then I feel really happy because I've made the mask really quickly, and then I quickly cut out the pieces for a couple of more. So yeah, kind of trying to daisy chain on that one a little bit. So I need to have another couple of sewing sessions still, and then I've got like an old handbag, like a beaded evening bag that I don't use very much obviously, and I just hang it on a hook by the front door, and I just put all of the masks in there, so it's like the mask bag and it's beaded and it's very glamorous, and we just sort of reach in there and get one. So more mask making. That's that really. Still no other types of sewing, but maybe I'll be going towards that soon. I've got some ideas for projects that I want to do. I also didn't quite realise, I mean, I'm totally naive. I'm really behind when it comes to social media, like I'm really bad at it. I just don't really know what's going on. I spend more time in my own world, like in my own creative world, in my head, making things and coming up with ideas, and I guess less time like seeing what else is out there. That's just how things are. I'm just like completely out of loop. And I didn't realise how enormous the historical costuming / reenactment movement, or whatever you want to call it, trend, movement, clique, hobby. Didn't realise quite how enormous it is on YouTube, like enormous. And part of me was like, oh, I wish I'd known that years ago, because I probably could have got a bit further like in my YouTube career. But you know, I could have probably contributed to that and like had a lot to say, because I did do a bachelor's degree in performance costume, so I was making historical costume, like historically accurate costume, for assessment academically and for a living for a number of years, and I've got a master's degree in fashion history, so I was like, oh, if only I knew this before. Also, I used to dress head to toe vintage, and stopped for a number of reasons. I mean, like, this is vintage and this is very much a vintage look, and I used to have a blog, like a style blog, back when that was a thing, but didn't realise that everything had just made this transition to YouTube and Instagram. But I just even more hopeless at Instagram. I'm quite happy with how things are going on YouTube, but like Instagram, totally hopeless. But thank you for everyone who's followed me. I am grateful. I'm just don't have enough hours in the day, basically. But yeah, that's been like quite a surprise, because I think when I was doing my costume degree, like it was all about blogs, and also a lot of them all seemed quite a lot older than me, whereas now a lot of people seem younger than me. So yeah, anyway, nothing new there. I've got no idea about trends. Really just don't know. Like, I still don't know what brioche knitting is. Every time someone's like, I'm knitting brioche, and I'm like, ooh, a cake. Yum, tell me more. And then they pull out this shawl and I'm like, oh. So, okay, we've done knitting, we've done sewing. So the last making section that I'll mention is Lard Alive. And I mentioned my foray into candle making. There's not really that much more to say, I think, but yeah, just really wanted to underscore that it is not as easy. I was extremely blasé. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos and was like, yeah, you melt it and pour it in, and what? I didn't have issues with the whole calculating volume and size and all of that kind of thing, but it's more just like the actual craft of it. And then obviously the scent blending, like I was quite confident about scent blending, but had no idea quite how much scent you actually need to add. So definitely a fun little autumn crafty experiment, but if you actually want to rely on having treaty, lovely scented candles, definitely best left to the pros. And then Lard Alive, so the other thing that's happened is that the cabbages are coming in off the allotment, and I've made 2 jars of sauerkraut here. I can currently hear them hissing. They're bubbling like a can of Coke would, and when I've like burped the jars, when you release the hinges, it's felt like it's gonna like explode in my hand. So I've started doing it outside like a couple of times a day, and they're like, don't know if you heard that, they're leaking juice everywhere. But yeah, this is just cabbage, carrot, ginger, white peppercorns, and a whole lot of squeezing. Just realised I had that whole conversation like where you basically talked to a couple of jars, so I did that. So back on my fermentation adventures, which I got a bit more into earlier on in the year, but then just got out of the habit of it. My sourdough starter went mouldy because it was too hot in the room, and then yeah, just kind of got really lazy and actually forgot how easy it is. But you just have to be on top of things and you have to keep an eye on it, and obviously when like work is insane and busy and you are both literally and figuratively running around all over the place, it's just like looking after fermenters. Yeah, looking after a colony of bacteria and yeasts is not really what's on your mind. But yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention is the silhouette's gone away now because the sun's gone behind a massive cloud, but my fig tree there, who I shared it with you in my garden tour that I did back in July. My fig tree there is now fruiting. It always fruits quite late in the season. It does have other crops through the year, but they never survive. They always drop off before they mature. So the October crop is coming in, and they're always greenish. This year more have got a purplish hue because we did the sensible thing of like cutting off leaves so that more of them got sunburnt basically, and that's making them purple. And I always make fig chutney. One year I also made fig and Earl Grey flavoured jam, and that was delicious, but the jam was very wet, so it didn't last very long. It didn't keep very well. We ate most of it and I think one jar went mouldy, but the chutney always goes really well and it matures as well, so it gets more delicious. Like I have one that I made 2 years ago that's really yummy. But I'd love to know if anyone has any other fig recipe suggestions. Last year I tried to make figgy puddings, but they sadly went mouldy. I think they just weren't stored in a cool enough place. But also they were very wet because I did use fresh figs in them, not dried. Like, do I need to somehow dehydrate the figs? I don't have a dehydrator or a very big oven, so that would be quite difficult. But I'd just really like to know if anyone has any other figgy recipe recommendations, as I would like to move on from my existing chutney, even though it is very delicious and very, very popular. I just want to try something else, like maybe with different flavours. My chutney is like with onions, tomato, pear, cinnamon. Does it have star anise? It's got a lot of ginger in it. It's very like warming, so there's quintessential spices. But yeah, just wonder if it could go with anything else, because my fig and Earl Grey, those flavours did blend together very well, and that was obviously more citrusy, a bit more aromatic in a different way, like a bit more astringent, a bit lighter, more floral tasting. So yeah, very, very curious. Obviously I've done various recipe searches online but never felt quite inspired, so if anyone has any recommendations I'd be very interested in hearing. Lastly, we have conversational threads, the section where I talk about any loose ends, literally, reflect more on previous themes and draw your attention to any project. And sometimes I do random things like read poetry and stuff like that. And I would love to read some more poetry, but I've been too tired to read any poetry lately. So when I have more going in, then more will come out. Last week I was delighted to be interviewed for another podcast, an audio podcast called Collage Creative, hosted by Amy, who runs the Knit Collage yarn business. It's a really, really lovely brand if you haven't heard from it already. It has lots of creative, like wacky and colourful and just fun and out of the box yarns, many of which are hand spun in India by a workshop of women whom she, trained up and who managed the workshop. So it's this really, really interesting enterprise in itself, as well as the really interesting yarns that she produces. So if, like me, you are not a spinner, definitely recommend checking them out, as well as their podcast, which has got this amazing back catalogue of interviews with all sorts of incredible other creative people. So thank you for having me, Amy. I'm not 100% sure when the interview will come out, but I will put a link down below in the description box, because obviously with like timings of when things are released, I'm not sure how they're gonna exactly intersect, but yes, anyway, the link will be down below for you guys to peruse, and I will be on it shortly. And that was a really interesting experience, of which I was like quite nervous about, because I'm used to being the interviewer, and although I talk about myself on this show, like I talk about what I'm making, so it's not really about me, at least it is and it isn't. Like it's not an autobiography, it's sort of like a talk through objects in a way, and themes and ideas. So yeah, I was quite nervous, but I mean, Amy seemed happy with the conversation, so I hope that you guys enjoy listening to that. And last episode I asked you guys if you had any tips for working from home through this autumn and winter, and you know, just generally letting me know what it had been like over lockdown over the last year, if you'd had a lot of changes and if you hadn't. And I wanted to thank everybody who left a comment for your generous advice and just for sharing your situations. It was so appreciated, and there was a lot of empathy down there in the comments, as well as some great suggestions. One thing that I just wanted to touch on briefly now is something that I intended to mention more last time, but I just didn't. And then a commenter did actually touch on it as well, which was that she said that she got up and put on a bra. And that made me smile. So I thought that her comment was interesting, and I thought I'd just touch upon kind of getting dressed up to be in your own home, which is something that I also did a few months ago in lockdown. I'll put a link to that episode there. So yeah, let me know if anyone is currently wearing a ball gown or a bra. No, not really, don't have to. But yeah, like, because I think for her idea of wearing a bra, like my equivalent of that has been wearing a button-up shirt and to button it all the way up to the neck, and just to feel like I'm ready, I'm started, like I've got to brush my hair, have a really hot shower, I love having really hot showers, and button up my shirt, and you know, I don't have to bother wearing makeup or anything like that. But then I'm kind of ready to start, and that feeling of literally being buttoned up has really helped me over the last couple of weeks. Just going back to the bra, I see bras as torture devices, so if I want to punish myself and I'm like, you've really got to do some work today, you've got to get it done, then I will put on an underwired bra, then I'll do it. So I wondered if anyone else has little things like that. Like, feel free like not to get too personal, you're happy, you know, I'm happy for you to be as vague as you like, but I was just curious like if anyone else had that thing, you know, like with the button up and sort of that idea of like the fabric kind of holding you in place, as it definitely has been for me as of late, and has been quite effective. Lastly, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everybody who has recently reached out, left me a comment and bought me a coffee over on ko-fi.com. There's a link below if you're interested in that, but basically allows you guys to financially support and contribute to the podcast, to the running costs. It allows you guys to buy me a little treat, which is very much appreciated these days. The cost of a pint in London has definitely gone up over lockdown, it's gone up. So yeah, thank you very much. It makes a really big difference, and I always fail to eloquently express my gratitude because I'm so grateful that it just kind of chokes me up every time. So a big thank you. We are now approaching 10,000 subscribers. I think we're like 9.2, 9.3, something like that, and that's very exciting, and I'm gonna do a giveaway when it hits 10k. So please do continue spreading the word. I really appreciate that. Like, if you don't have the means to contribute financially to this podcast, either through Ko-fi or by buying one of my patterns online, one of my knitting patterns, that's totally fine. Like, obviously it's not obligatory, and just by watching and like helping me out with the view count and like the advertising and all of that kind of thing all works. Like, it all contributes back to the growth of the channel, and just like sharing, you know, reposting on Instagram and, you know, showing me in your stories and telling other people about my patterns, and that word of mouth activity also makes a really big difference to the growth of the channel. So that's a fantastic way to support the Crimson Stitchery if you are able to do that. I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm going to spend this evening editing this podcast, putting it up together, and yeah, just happy to be back. I'll probably stick with the fortnightly releases for now. If I'm able to do any kind of tutorial, I will, but if there's anything you want me to prioritize in terms of tutorials, like I think on the list I had like swatching, I had styling, and I had a conversation about colour, but they're all quite big topics, so it takes a really long time to produce that content. So if there's anything anyone like particularly wants me to prioritize, or consider prioritizing I should say, this autumn, feel free to, you know, drop a little request down below in the comments. I'm always open to constructive criticism and feedback and suggestions from you guys. I really appreciate this being like a two-way conversation. That's it from me. Hope that you are well, hope that you are happy and finding some small way to stay creative this this autumn. I'll speak to you guys soon. Take care. Bye bye.